Hello there everybody, Timix here, and welcome to Let's Play Frostpunk. I want to let the beginning of the game speak for itself, mostly, but I want to do a couple maintenance things. Frostpunk is the latest offering, been out a little over 2 days as of this recording. It's from 11-Bit Studios, who made This War of Mine, and much like that, is a very unique title. It's got elements of city builder. It's got a linear scripted story, and it's got survival game, and it sort of all rolls that all into one. And much like this War of Mine, it doesn't really fit those predefined genres. So people who wanted a open city builder like Skylines, that's not here. People who want just a survival game, that's not really here either. It's kind of unique. I don't think I've ever played a game like Frostpunk. I like the originality. I also like a challenge, which sort of leads into the next thing about what kind of a playthrough this is going to be, because there's already lots of them out there. With any significant release, that's always going to be the case. And this is, I don't normally do games early on. Mostly just because why do the same thing everybody else is doing. But the thing is, everybody's playing Frostpunk the same way. From what I've seen, like almost everyone is making the same early choices, and they're probably just trying to show off optimal stuff. But I've also seen like reviews and people talking about, well, if anybody does it without making this option, taking this path, I'll be really impressed. Like there's only one good way to do it. There's a best way, but it's one of those things where there's more possibilities in this game than they want to give it credit for. The idea that the game pushes you down a negative, hostile path. Not really the case. So that's what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be the path of faith for those who know the game. A playthrough that is like noble. I'm going to put the citizens' needs number one, even above what might be better for the city as a whole at times, as opposed to them just being cogs in the machine and they're dispensable and whatever happens to them, well, too bad, but the city will go on type of thing. And I'm going to do that on hard difficulty here. Hard affects several things. We've got, it says more challenging with very little room for error. There isn't a lot of room for error, but there is some. And if you start well, things get easier later on. Anyway, we've got people's needs. They're going to get sick and be hungry faster. We've got the economy, slower resource gathering, slower technology, fewer resources in the Frostlands. Temperature is going to drop faster. Cold days is going to last longer. And people are going to be pessimistic. They're more sensitive to bad events. Good events have less of an effect. So, we'll get into more about the game after we see what they do for the intro here.
We roam the still, cold world. No horizon in sight. The rulers of old, stripped with pride and glory. It feels as yesterday we were turning the wheels of progress, until the frost stopped it all, suddenly, without a warning. When tides had changed, they changed for all of us. No matter wealth or class. We've lost our world to snow, and with it, our last traces of humanity. We bid farewell to plenty, and for those who remained came the time to adapt. we decided to leave our homes and head north. We roamed for weeks, maybe months, leaving behind all the things we once believed had made us. It was hope that pushed us forward. Slowly, step by step, we knew the cost of our journey, and we paid the price 100 times. Finally, the time has come to build the last city on Earth.
Okay, and that's our mission. A new home, New London, as it were. The last city on Earth. We fled from London and crossed the sea to reach the frozen north. On the way, our convoy was hit by a blizzard and scattered. A handful of us managed to reach the site of this generator, only to find it frozen, solid, and abandoned. Why is no one here? Did any of our people survive the blizzard? Are there others out there? Whatever we do, we should expect the worst now that the world as we know it has crumbled. We have to survive. I just love the effects here on the edge of the screen, the ambiance of it. Audio and visually, Frostpunk is quite impressive. And there's some cool music that I have disabled, I should mention, for copyright reasons. Respecting intellectual property is important. And, it would get flagged if I uploaded it without it, so it's not like, there's a whole lot of reasonable choice in the matter. I like that descending camera shot there, too, just with the wind and the snow blowing across. Really nice. So here's our first objective. Major objectives in the story will pop up here for you. Fight the cold. We need to get the generator working. It provides heat and power to other buildings. Without it, we'll freeze to death. Stockpile some coal and start the generator. Okay, and I always want to pause it right away just to take a look at what's going on. And a few highlights. We've got our resources at the top. We have no coal, we have no wood, we have no steel. We've got 1 steam core, 50 raw food, and 0 food rations. People will eat raw food only when they're starving. Otherwise, they'll wait until you've gotten into food rations. And it's more efficient to use rations because you get 2 of them out of each raw food. So that's an important thing to keep an eye on. Running out of rations is bad. We are good on it right now, but as we start, nobody's going to be hungry right away. You have a brief period to deal with that. Okay, so we've got our time controls. The work hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. to 1800. So it's a 10-hour shift to start the game. Anyway, that can be adjusted. We've got our weather report ahead. It's going to get colder in a few days. That's day 4 there. Early on day 4, it's going to get colder. So for now, we're fine, but and when I say fine, it's negative 20 degrees Celsius, which is really warm by Frostpunk measurements. It's ridiculously cold out here. That's basically the idea. And if you do the temperature, you can see there's several levels. Comfortable. You see chilly is what most of it is. Livable, low risk of getting ill. That's, you see we got our people down there. Comfortable, people won't get ill at all. The way the people get sick is by getting too cold in this game. And then you've got cold, moderate risk of illness, very cold, high risk of getting ill, and low risk of being gravely ill. And freezing, very high risk of getting ill, and a small risk of amputation. So that's that's just when it's sort of like your severe frostbite type of situation. Okay, now it says stockpile coal and activate the generator. We're not going to worry too much about these objectives right now because we need to get basic survival type stuff up and running. You can see down here we've got 80 homeless. By the way, down here is your labor pool, so there's 3 different kinds of employees. We'll get to that soon. Employees, workers, population, whatever. Everybody in the population is into that. But they're all homeless, and these are the sort of the warning notifications that you want to deal with these problems right away. Discontent, none of that right now, and hope is the positive. So these are sort of the 2 measurements of the attitude of the people that discontent and hope are. Hope is a little below halfway, no discontent. So overall, that's a good situation for starting out, particularly considering the journey it took to get here. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the city itself, we want to take a look at the Book of Laws. We've also got an economy tab here. That'll come in place much later in the game, and building stuff for construction. But the Book of Laws, adaptation, find ways to battle hunger, sickness, and apathy. And you just got like the hardy survivor, look on all of these people. They're just forlorn and fairly miserable, but they're hardened. I like that. Okay, so adaptation. And within the adaptation Book of Laws, the only one that we have right now, we're looking at this is basically the way that you shape how your society is going to deal with problems. And you can guide it in different directions. So let's take a look. For example, let's say that, you're low on food and you decided, well, what's this food stuff over here? Food additives, adding sawdust to meals to make them more filling, although not exactly tasty or healthy. So people have to eat less often. You can make the sawdust meal. Hope will fall, discontent will rise, and some people eating sawdust meals will fall ill. So, the thing about that whole issue is that, I'm doing a noble, for the people, benevolent ruler kind of playthrough. And so given that, obviously I'm not going to pick stuff that's going to hurt the people. I don't want to pick stuff that's going to make hope fall and discontent rise. I want to pick things that are going to make the people happy, and I didn't mean to exit out of that, so we'll go back in. It's easy to do that because you think close, you're just closing the one thing that you're on, but you're actually closing the whole screen. This screen it has kind of difficult, navigation. It's not always completely clear to me how exactly it works. I can't just move the screen around. Okay, so that's one option. Now let's say look at the emergency shift. Just another example. Make discontent rise. You can make people work for 24 hours to accomplish something that you really need them to do. But it's going to make them unhappy. Like just signing the law makes them a little bit unhappy, but then the emergency shift will raise discontent even more. Okay, so again, not something that I want to do. Now, if you don't pick a law right away, the game will bug you with a pop-up decision. Hey, you should look in the Book of Laws. We're short on labor. Maybe we should put the children to work. Now, if I go back out and show you real quick, let's take a look at that employment thing over here. And you can see the bottom one, is the 2 little gloves there, that's the children. That's 15 children. Then you got 15 engineers above that and 40 regular workers. Engineers are basically the skilled labor, but workers are actually better at least one thing that I've noticed. But there's some jobs that both can do. There's some jobs that only workers can do. There are jobs that only engineers can do. So you've got a bit of a division between skilled and unskilled labor, or maybe the elite and the grunts, or however you want to look at that. But if you added the 15 children, I mean, that would be an almost, they're almost 20% of your starting people. So you take that out. I mean, anybody who knows anything about strategy games, a 20% boost is not something you just throw away. So, this is just one of those examples. It's probably the biggest one in the game, as it's a starting off right away. But almost everybody is like, you know what, we're going to put children into safe jobs. And then you can later put them into all jobs. Each of these unlocks something. So, up to a certain point, there's a limit to the tree, but if you choose the safe jobs option, you can later select this one. One of the important things about laws is they all have a cooldown. It says another one can be passed after 18 hours, and all the first choice ones are an 18-hour cooldown. And then it's twice as long for the next one, and then for the ones that go further than that, it's 3 times as long. So the cooldown increases, but you always want to sign a law right away, because you can't just sign them whenever you want to. You're going to wait for it. If you say, look, there's not enough hands to do all the work, true, put them in safe workplaces. Hope is going to fall slightly, and they can be injured in accidents. And, that's just one of those things where it looks like an open and shut thing, and from a purely, metagaming standpoint, it is open and shut. There's no other choice for the first option that you're going to have that is going to be nearly as good. And with this kind of game where you got to get your economy up and running, getting that initial boost, it's not going to be overcome by anything that I'm going to do later. So if you're making that choice purely on optimization instead of like a role-playing mentality, then you're going to go with the safe jobs. And I've just seen, so many reviews and like LPs where people like, anybody beats us on hard without picking, the child labor right away is, I'm going to be really impressed. Or, writing that the game pushed me in this direction, then it, criticized me for it later. And, to me, like, that's the whole point of Frostpunk, is that you can, like, the best way is not always the right way, or not even that, but if you choose survival at all costs, the consequences to that. Is it worth surviving if you have to do certain things? Or would it be better to take a lower chance of survival or a suboptimal approach, but value the individual more? So the game may push you in that direction, but you don't have to accept that. You've got the choice. So as you probably figured out by now, I'm going with child shelters. Children will be safer if they stay in child shelters during the day, and they won't cause any mischief. And then, so there's a new building unlocked, the child shelter, and if I don't pick that, I can't ever build one. Like, it's dependent, the unlocking is depending on choosing this law. Hope will rise. Providing all children with a place in a child shelter gives a permanent hope bonus. Okay, all that's positive, but then the red negative, you will have to build a child shelter. So this doesn't come without a cost. I'm basically making them a promise. It doesn't do any good to go make sermons about child shelters if you don't actually put them in place. Now, when you make a promise like this, you've basically got 3 days to fulfill it. So I don't have to do it right away. Safe place for 15 children during work hours. We have 15, so one of these will satisfy our current needs. Base heating level of 2, and it's going to cost 20 wood and 5 steel. Okay, so we're going to sign that. And then we've got this cooldown here.
New law in the city.
And the town crier putting forth his 2 cents. When we unpause time, people will have their little comments about it. They always do that when you put a new law. So this can be easy to miss. We'll want to watch for that when it is up in 18 hours, which will be, early the next morning. Okay, now on to our practical matters of getting this city up and running. Because right now it's not much of a city. Right now, here's what we've got. We've got some streets around here. We've got this thing. This is our stockpiles building. You can see the maximum capacity right now is up to 900 coal, up to 300 of everything else. And then we can build additional storage depots to hold more of those things if we want. But we haven't done that yet. So this is our stockpile thing. We've got all of our people milling about. And we can take a look at them, like this guy, Luke Haddon. Well, he thinks everything's fine. That's because he just got here. It won't take them very long at all to change their mind. He's an engineer, so he's one of the skilled guys. Currently resting. Health is fine. He's not at risk of getting ill. You saw in the temperature overlay, they are in the comfortable range. Livable, excuse me, not comfortable. So very low risk of getting ill. Here's the homelessness thing. Doesn't have any shelter. Will be forced to sleep on the ground. Doesn't have a home. So it's just chilly outside is his temperature, and he doesn't have a workplace, so there's no temperature there. And then you can look at the family, if they have any. There's Molly Haddon, also an engineer, so a family of engineers. Pretty much the same status as we've just started, and we can cycle through these. Some of them don't have any family, etc. Okay, so that's that. Then, of course, we've got the generator, which is a thing. The steam generator in the middle is literally a thing of, religious, spiritual importance. You can just imagine, like, this is your lifeline. If the generator dies or blows up or is destroyed or if something destructive happens to it, then the city is doomed. It's pretty much that simple. So the thing about this, which is an interesting example of form-following function, the heat is radiated outward of this and only has a certain range. We can see we've only got the range settings 1 through 4. It's turned off. We only have range setting 1 and power level 1. This is the strength of it. This is how far it reaches out. And this overdrive thing, doesn't cost any more to run it. This runs on coal. It's a steampunk era, but it will only last so long. And just running it non-stop, I believe it's about 24 hours that it will last before it. If it gets to the maximum, this is like a red thermometer. This gets up to 100%. Yeah, the generator will explode and the game will end. That's pretty much the size of it. Now, if you have an overdrive on for a while and turn it off, it will start going back down again, but much more slowly than it rises. Here's the consumption of it. You can see there's nothing on there. We don't have it on yet. It costs 6 to turn it on and 6 to keep it going. So we couldn't even turn it on now if we wanted to. So it does nothing because we don't have any coal. But so that's one of our key objectives. Obviously, get this thing going. Without it, we're all going to eventually freeze. And so that's what we have. Like, seriously, we've got some food in there and a steam core. In case something happens to the generator when you do repair it or whatever. That's one of the purposes for those. But other than that, we've got nothing. So how do we get more? Well, there's lots of resources around here, some of which we can use and some of which we can't. Just as an example of what we can't is the trees up here. Frozen trees, build a sawmill to start extraction. Okay, well, we can't build a sawmill. And when I say I can't, I mean we literally can't. It's not in our list of things that we can use right now. So that'll come down the future. What we can use is these piles of stuff scattered around. Like this is wood crates, and we can assign people those. See, if we put 2 people there, it would take 0.7 an hour. We can assign people to the steel. Or we can assign people to coal. So without building anything, those are the things we can do. We can have people go gather up coal, wood, or steel. And then eventually build those into other things. So, we've got 65 active people. And that's what we want to do. Now, in order to maintain maximum effectiveness, I'm going for essentially as perfect of a playthrough as I can. It's not going to be perfect. Nobody ever is perfect, virtually in anything. But I want to make as few mistakes as possible, just maximize things to see what's the best we can do on this run while still going for the noble, benevolent approach. And in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is we're going to want to be able to run the generator all night. And the night, in other words, free time from work, starts at 1800, goes to 0800 the next day. So it's 10 hours on, 14 hours off. Well, if we need to run the generator for 14 hours, and it costs 6 coal an hour, that's 84. Another 6 to get it going is 90. So we want a little bit more than 90 because we want to get the, you want to have a small reserve at least, because otherwise it will shut down if it gets to 0. You want to make sure that you're not running quite that tight. The other thing is we can afford to have a tiny bit extra here. Now I'm going to use the coal places over here because of how I've got it planned that I'm going to build the city. This is the best place for me to draw from initially. So if we've got 10 hours and we want to get, say if we just did the one person in there. So each person is going to grab 1 per hour. And so if we left them in there, that would be 10. So if we're going to get 10 for a shift from one person, then we might say, well, we need 9 people. That's 5.1 from 5, and then if we added 4, nope, not there. I'm going to split them up between the 2 piles to sort of balance things off. Okay, that's going to give us 5.1 plus 4.1. That should give us 92. In actuality, it's going to come in just shy of that. The math isn't precise. And the bottom line is doing this is going to be at like right at 90 or 91. It's just a little bit too close. I'm going to add a 5th person. That should get us to just over 100. That's a little more than we need. But that one extra person being brought off of these, it turns out the way the math is, it's not actually going to hurt us on this first day. I'm going to put everybody I can on wood. And because we're not going to need any steel right away, there's nothing that's a high enough priority for us to build on the first day that's going to require steel. And, so we're going to have 55 people on wood. That 56th person is not going to bring in enough wood for it to make a difference. So we can have that little bit of buffer here. Throw the engineers on that one, and I'm emphasizing this side. And the reason that I'm going to do that is simply that I don't want, we're going to, again, because of the future plan, I'm planning on building something. Let me show it here real quick. One of your resource buildings is the gathering post. And that helps people gather from piles like this more efficiently. I'm eventually going to build one of those over here. One of the first couple I build is going to be in this area. And so, they'll be able to gather more efficiently from this later, so I'd rather maximize my effort on the other side. That's the whole approach that I've got behind this. So let's let these wonderful people get to work. And while they're doing that, marching off to wherever, before they even get out there, they're going to, here's our comments about the shelter. What are they going to do all day? Watch the snowfall? Well, for now, yes. See, they're pushing their way through the snow, but it's them being assigned and trying to work on this stuff that brings in the resources. You can see it's already up here. Now, somebody might say, well, why don't you just start building? And the reason for that is the only time that they will gather resources is during their work shift. The 8 a.m. to 1800, 6 p.m. time period. But they will build things during their free time, during their off time. They will build things if you've got them set up, because I mean, I don't know what the sort of justification for that is, but it would be kind of foolish for them to have like a place to build, a place to live, or whatever, and not be willing to work on it. Game could have been designed differently so that they would do both of those during their work shifts, and their off time was just their off time. But I think a lot of it is, from an entertainment standpoint. If you're playing something and like half the game you can't do anything, well, that's pretty boring. You see, we've even got the kids down here. I like the little animations and everything, and I tend to keep it pretty much as a straight this direction from the camera, but I can move it. Boy, if I don't screw it up, you can move it right, left. You can zoom out. There's 4 zoom levels. One is like up here. We're above this big crater that we're on. This looks like this is how we got down or something into here. We can zoom in, all the way. This is too flat to really be useful most of the time, so I tend to play on this level, and I think most people I've seen do. Sometimes I want to go out to this level, but usually it's here. Every once in a while up here, but I do like to come in and look at everything. You also don't get the icons over the building if you're all the way down here. So we can see it. We've already got snow on the ground around here, which we didn't have before. Snow fills in all these areas. Haven't had a good chance to see it other places, but if you zoom in over here, it can be interesting to see. They've built their little fires in trash pits or trash can things or whatever that they're using to try to stay reasonably warm while they trudge through this snow that's as deep as they are tall, and they're looking for bits of coal that they can bring back. So that's always something that's interesting. And look at that lack of shelter. They're starting to get upset about that already. So we got similar things going on over here by the wood crates. You can see like each of these had 120 to start out with. So we're already chewing through a pretty good amount of this. And you can see our supply increasing over there. These also going down. That's 82. That's a little higher at 90 because I didn't put quite as many people up there. But, we're chewing through, and we're getting close to the end of the first day and already getting our first complaints. And you can see the Book of Laws countdown. That's halfway there. I did forget to do one other thing, so I'm just going to pause it. But you can rotate the camera also. So if there's something that you can't get a good view of, you just turn it wherever you need to, and then I usually try to come back to right about there, because that's, something like that is more or less straight on. And that's the way I'm naturally oriented. In terms of I'm just going to talk about this as being south, and that's north, east, west. So let's roll on again. And I always pause it right at closing time. If you get that hammer, and I missed it by a minute, so what?
The work day is up.
Okay, we're done, and we're right at 100 coal. It was estimating 102. It's usually just a hair under the estimate. We've got 184 wood. So that's going to be plenty for our purposes. Now, of course, the first thing we want to do, as benevolent rulers, is to turn on the generator. Now, I should mention real quick that it doesn't bother them very much if it's cool in here during the day. Because they're not, once we get some houses up, we'll see it, or living quarters, I should say, not houses. We'll be able to see it better. But, generally during work time, they're at work, so it's the temperature at work that affects them. But if they're off, then it's more the temperature at home. That's where a lot of them are going to be. So it's particularly important at night, especially since people get sick due to the cold much easier at night from what I can see. My experiences so far. So that's really important. And also, there's just the fact that if you don't turn it on, they're eventually going to come complain about it. Say, look, you've got to turn the generator on at least for the night, or we're going to freeze to death. So there's some in-game text behind that also. So we're going to turn it on, and we're going to lose that 6 coal immediately, and then it's going to burn. It says it's got enough for about 16 hours. It's going to be 14 hours until daybreak. So we got a little bit of a buffer. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to build things, and we want to handle the problem. Now the thing about this is each level or each range is basically a 2 square thing outside of this inner ring. So, like, if I show the street building thing real quick, this is a good way to look at it. You see the green part of the streets, and this is the inside. So, like, 1, 2 away, that's ring 1, second ring, third and fourth. Now that points up a couple things. One is that there's up to range setting 4 and up to steam level of 4. We don't. That's as high as it goes. So anything beyond 4 out is something you're never going to heat with this particular generator sitting right here. So the things that need to be kept warm need to be inside of that, and that also means that to keep more room for them, you want to keep stuff that doesn't have to be kept warm outside of it. And you see, we can't do anything with this stockpiles thing. We can't, like, build another one somewhere else or dismantle it or do any such thing. So that's always going to be there. Alright, so we can't build this stuff. Why? Because we didn't gather any steel. That's resources. Let's go over to people. The child shelter also requires steel. We're not going to fulfill that promise yet. Let me just take a moment real quick to point out that we've got our timer over here for that as well. 2 days, 14 hours to build it. And this bar goes down a little bit as time goes past. It will turn different colors as it gets closer to try to get your attention a little bit. Most of the UI stuff is understated and easy to miss. That's one of the very legitimate complaints about Frostpunk that's out there, is that, like, it's a well designed, it's clean, but it's too subdued with stuff that you should want to know, like the just pop-up notifications and stuff is not always as obvious as you'd like it to be. So, okay, we've got 10 wood that we can build a thinly insulated shelter for 10 people to sleep in. Now, I don't like the idea of thinly insulated shelters in this kind of weather, but guess what? It's either that or nothing. Tent's the only building we can build that we can put people in. Okay, so that's our first priority with construction. And, generally after the work shift, the rest of the day, the hours off, is the construction and, when we get to it, hunting period to get more food. That's really what this period of time is for. So we want to keep them on the inner ring. Now, anything that's not attached to a street isn't going to work. You can see there it's green. Green is good. Yellow means it's not going to work as placed. And the other thing is, anything that's out here is not going to get heated. So it's got to be in this very first ring. Even that, not heated. Only there. So we are going to need 8 of these. So it's going to take 80 wood. Go ahead and plop those down. Now, we're going to need more things than that. But what I like to do on the first night is just to build these, because that way, until I have enough labor to do more. You can see this thing doesn't have anybody, 0 out of 10. This says 4 out of 10 builders. It'll be 5 soon. These others are fully staffed. That's why they don't have the numbers behind them. Once we've got enough workers to build everything, then I'll start gradually adding other stuff that I want to build. But if they have the houses up, and I'm just going to let this run, you see it melting the snow over here. That's a cool effect. We're going to see the snow start to melt on the roof here. Then let's take a look at our temperature display. And you can see, okay, Now we've got a whole bunch, and even these are livable even though they're not built yet. Anything that's put down, there we go. You can see it pop up. So now we're comfortable or livable. So, oh, somebody's got something they want to tell us. So let's pause and look at that. Housing problem, no roof over our heads. Captain, they always call you Captain. People are understandably concerned about the lack of shelter. If falling ill from sleeping outside in this terrible cold, we'd better do something about it. So you can provide some shelter, 2 days to give shelter for 40 people. For everybody, 2 days for shelter for 80 people, or you don't address this right now and discontent rises slightly. And I've already got them down for everybody, so I'll do the I'll provide shelter for everyone. And so, since I was planning on doing it anyway, that's gonna, see we've got another timer here, 2 days. That's gonna give us a nice bonus to hope when it's done. The exclamation marks there on the side provide, you know, an indicator of how happy they're gonna be over these things. There was 1 for the partial and 3 for the full promise. Anyway, the purpose on doing the houses first is that they'll have somewhere now to stay. The workers, as soon as they're done with building something, they'll have somewhere to stay. And I like that very much. And we've got something else now. A word of advice, the wisdom of the crowd. Captain, when facing demands, remember this. People usually look for the quickest solution, not the best one. You don't have to agree to everything they ask for. If you fix the problem your way, it's fine. And I kind of like that they threw that in, because that just sort of fights against the whole mentality of, oh, I got to go for what I need now. Not always. So it's just sort of, I look at that as just the game telling you, you know, you don't have to take the low-hanging fruit. And sometimes it's the right thing to do, but not always. Okay, so there's 1 in. You can see now we've got that one up to 5, because there's 65 workers and that many buildings. Okay, so now we've got a few spare people. Alright, now we're going to move to health. This is the medical post, and this little symbol means it has to maintain a certain temperature. I believe it's got to be chilly or better is the deal there. Or it will cease functioning. A basic medical station with 5 beds treats the most common ailments. And that's going to cost 25 wood. But we are definitely going to get sick people this first night. It's unavoidable. And we've been working out in Chile this whole day, and Chile does have a risk of getting cold. Most of the time, people are going to be at some risk of sickness. So you need to have something ready for them. So we're going to go ahead and put that down as our next building, and we've already used like 100 wood. But it's going to good use, right? So now we can see everybody moving around, doing their thing. Although again, I like to stay up here so I know what my labor situation is. And there's another house finished. Each one that finished blinks this off, lowers that discontent a little bit. We've got 30 houses and 50 more to go. So next up, we've taken care of any early potential medical needs, and housing is put up. Now we got to start worrying about food. Right there. So we've got the hunter's hut gathering more food, and it says they hunt at night. And then we've got the cookhouse. Raw foodstuffs into nutritious meals. 1 unit is used to prepare 2 standard food rations. Another building that needs to be heated. Now, as much as we'd like to put this in the first row, it's not going to fit. And somebody might say, well, then why'd you put up the medical post? Well, then that would have had to been out here. And we've got to have enough housing for everybody. So we're just going to have to suffer with having it out in this area. And I'd like to put it somewhere where there's already a street, so I don't have to build one. It's just common sense. And I want to use this space for something else, so I'm going to throw up the cookhouse. And there's another house done. Tent, rather. Half of our people. And we've got full labor here. Now that's going to let us turn those raw food into food rations. But how about getting more raw food? That's where that hunter's hut comes in. Has a little bit higher base heating level, but the heat, it doesn't have to be heated in order to function. It'll just, people will be more comfortable and they won't get sick as much when they're hunting, if that's the case. And each of these, we're going to need as many of these as we can get. So if I'm going to build them right in here. And the reason for that is that we won't get into it till the next day, but there's a timing issue. Just going to place that down and move this on. There's a timing issue with hunting, and there's another one done. So that means we can place the next one. But the timing issue with hunting is that, well, like I said, we'll get that tomorrow. But the main point is that it takes them some time to travel from wherever they're working to the hunters' huts to build or prepare for the hunt, and then they go out. And the reason that matters, is that the reason I'm putting them in here instead of somewhere like, say, outside on the edge, because they don't have to be heated, save this for heated stuff, is that I tried that solution and it didn't really work. Ready for the next bit here, but what happened was it took them too long to get there, and then that delays lots of other things. I'm not trying to be vague, I just want to be able to show that to you instead of explaining it. So just to move this along, the main point is that they need to be close to where they work for them to travel there properly. And I never took off, this is a mistake, I never took the people out of these areas. I like to always do that at closing, and I'm not sure why I didn't do it at the end of the previous work shift, is what I mean. Because then pretty much every day early on, like every day is different challenges. So you're going to assign your employees, workers, I keep saying employees, this isn't a business, this is survival of a city. Assign the workers differently. So what, just having them free lets you do that easily at the beginning of the next day. Now I want to take a look at the medical post here too, because I've tried multiple times, and basically you always want this to be fully staffed, and I'll demonstrate the why. But there's always going to be people sick the first night, so we want to put them in there. And you notice that only engineers can work this, so you can't put workers in that, and that's a very important factor, because you only have so many engineers. And so now that I've put 5 engineers in there, I didn't have to do it quite yet, but I have less people to work on the constructing. But I've still got 60, and we're wrapping some houses up. We're still looking pretty good. There is, in fact, only one more thing that I want to build today, and that is some streets. And I want to build a street out this way. And this is because of, I talked about the generator being, the 4 wide thing. So a road of 8 length will get it all the way out here. And there's some buildings that I want to build outside of the heated zone that I'm going to want to build tomorrow. And the way I've designed it, they're going to be built over here. So now that I'm putting that street out there gives me the ability to do that. And that's going to take me down to 11 wood, which is too little to build anything useful. So we're pretty much going to sit on that here. So we can go ahead and fast forward this a bit and have everybody go build their things and watch them merrily work. And there's our shelter promise fulfilled. Everyone feels relieved with a roof, even a flapping one over their head. Hope rises. I've taken that thing off. Here's our hope. Moving up, you can see this flapping around, steam coming up. They're wandering out there building that street. It's now the early hours of the morning. But look at that. Yeah, and all of a sudden there's snow. There's snow on top of them because it's cold out here. And oh, we got a new law. I let that run a little bit over, but a few minutes in going a new law, not a big deal. Okay, now child shelters. That unlocks the apprentices over here. And the thing about this is, what I've typically done and done at first is gone with engineer apprentices. So let's look at that. Education is the key to our future. Teach our children engineering so they can help with new designs. Now this is putting the children to work. And we get some benefit from it. They'll help at workshops, speeding up research. It's going to be a very important thing, as it is in most games that have it. And you see it doubles the time cooldown to 1 day and 12 hours before we can sign the next law. But, you know, while it does put them to work and they are helping us, it's also teaching them something. So this is sort of a situation, as opposed to them, you know, manual labor that's not really going to teach them a particularly useful trade, a particularly scientific trade. It's just, you know, we need this done, so you do it because we need more helpers. And it's work that could hurt them. This is safe work with adults supervising them, and they're still helping with things. It's like a symbiotic thing. It's a cooperative synthesis as opposed to just purely get this done because we need it. But what I'm going to go with is the medical apprentice, just because of the theme of this. It's the noble, you know, thing to do. It's the benevolent thing to do. Teach our children medicine so they can help with the sick. Children from child shelters will help at medical facilities, raising their efficiency. It means that patients will be healed faster and be able to get back to work. And so that's going to be helpful with everything that we need to do, because the more time people are sick, the less time they're working, and that is not a good thing for anybody. So we're going to sign that.
Listen, everyone. New law is signed.
And one of the things about laws that's interesting is you can sign them anytime, day or night. Let the kids learn. We need more skillful medics. Helping the sick will be good for the kid's character, so people tend to approve of this whole thing. And there's really no point in, you know, it's the whole idea, if you do the shelters, then you want to do something with it. You know, don't just, I mean, there's no point in building a shelter and then not being able to have the kids in it do anything. So once you've committed to the shelter, you want to go with one of the apprentice options. Now we've got 3 people being treated. We'll take a look at that. There's our patients. So we've got Joshua Swan, who's a worker who's going to treatment, Henry Chernock, about a day, and Timothy Barber, 23 hours. So until these are healthy, and typically they get sick for a day, and then after a day's treatment they're able to go back to work. Until they get healthy, they're off the workforce. So with the medical system, what you've got is, you know, you've got to treat them here. You're going to lose the sick people, and you're going to lose from the workforce for as long as they're sick, and also the engineers who are treating them. But if you didn't build the medical post and do that, you'd have the engineers working, but the sick people wouldn't get better because they wouldn't get treated. And so you just gradually end up with more and more sick people, and pretty soon there's no way to do any work. So you're really not going to avoid the medical system. You just got to work with it. Now, if we take one person out, and we can see we lowered the efficiency of the building, and now it's going to take about 2 days for so there's no, I've never been able to pull engineers out of a medical post and still have it heal people at the same rate. So you pretty much just want to leave them in there. And that pretty much concludes our first day. Now typically, see if I can show it here. There's a fourth sick person. And 4 to 5 is typical for the first night. There, and you see it slowed down at 5. The game basically considers 5 o'clock sort of the start of the new day. It starts to get a little bit brighter. It's not as dark, and you'll have people popping up and saying things, and they'll then walk around in here. So 5 o'clock is the end of the first day. Now, if we take a look at our top view, well, it doesn't look like a huge amount different. I mean, we've got that street going out that way that's sort of covered by smoke. There it is. We've got this ring around here mostly full, which we just had that stockpiles before, so we basically filled in almost all the inner ring. And then we've got these buildings down here, the cookhouse and the 2 hunters' huts. And we didn't have them up in nearly a time to use them, but we will be able to use them tomorrow. So now we've got shelter, we've got food, we've got medical care. And we're just starting on our further infrastructure. So that's not a bad deal at all. And of course we've got the heat, the coal for the generator. Not a bad deal at all. That takes care of what we're going to do for the first day. Hope you're enjoying this so far. We'll have more Frostpunk next time. Until then, thanks for